At their core, a narcissist is profoundly reliant on something that most people don't actively consider external validation. This idea, referred to in psychological terms as narcissistic supply, serves as the emotional energy that upholds their delicate self-image. When this supply is absent, they start to fall apart. Leaving a narcissist means more than just ending a relationship. It means severing their main source of psychological nourishment. This lack, this sudden withdrawal of the emotional support you offered, triggers their internal disintegration. To grasp why this occurs, it's essential to understand that a narcissist's self-perception differs significantly from that of most individuals. For many, self-esteem is built on a combination of internal and external factors: personal successes, meaningful connections, and a sense of inherent worth. However, a narcissist lacks this solid foundation. At some point in their early development, they learn to create a false self, a type of psychological shield, to manage feelings of inadequacy. This false self appears grandiose, entitled, and superior, yet it is fundamentally empty. Because it is empty, it demands continuous validation from the outside world to stay intact. This is why your role in their life was so crucial. You were not merely a partner, friend, or family member. You were a reflection. Every compliment you offered, every disagreement you backed down from, and every bit of attention you directed toward them reinforced their illusion of superiority, which they desperately needed. Without that relentless reflection, the mask begins to crack, revealing the chilling truth they desperately strive to conceal: an abyss of emptiness. When you turn away, you shatter that mirror, compelling the narcissist to confront themselves in a manner they are woefully unprepared for. This confrontation feels like an existential threat, not from a place of longing like a healthy person might feel for a loved one, but because your absence forces them to face the gaping void they have evaded their entire lives. This is why their response to abandonment is often so violent. It transcends mere heartbreak. It is an unraveling of their very identity. What is particularly haunting is that most narcissists remain oblivious to this process. They navigate the world through a lens of power: who dominates, who triumphs, who falters. Your choice to leave dismantles this entire structure. It reveals to them that they are not as invincible as they once thought, and even more terrifying, that you possess the freedom to break free from their grasp. This threatens their deepest need to be seen as superior and in control. Yet, here lies the dark irony: a narcissist cannot accept that you held the power to destabilize them. To acknowledge this would mean confronting their own vulnerability, a truth too unbearable to face. Instead, they twist the narrative. They may belittle you, tarnish your name, or convince themselves that you were the source of all their woes. These reactions aren't mere acts of cruelty. They are desperate efforts to mend the delicate balance that your absence has disrupted. The cycle doesn't end there. The insatiable hunger for narcissistic supply drives them to quickly seek out a replacement. Yet, here lies the painful truth: no substitute can ever truly satisfy. Why? Because you were woven into the fabric of their self-image. You were not just a source of validation. You were an integral part of the identity they had painstakingly constructed. When that piece is taken away, no hasty replacement can ever fill the void. This is why many narcissists flit from one relationship to another, never content, always in pursuit of the next fix, yet forever haunted by the memories of those they lost. You were more than just a source of supply. You were a vital part of who they believed themselves to be. When you left, you didn't just liberate yourself. You laid bare the deep-seated dependency they desperately try to conceal. You unveiled the truth behind their polished facade. Without a constant influx of external validation, their entire sense of self begins to unravel. Perhaps the most poignant realization is that the strength a narcissist projects is merely a facade. The power they exert over others is not born from genuine self-confidence, but from an unending, exhausting struggle to avoid confronting their own emptiness. When you choose to step away from that dynamic, you strike at the core of their vulnerability. Ultimately, it serves as a painful reminder that your absence holds far more weight than your presence ever did. When you leave, you don't just take yourself. You take with you the one thing they desperately cling to, the reflection that nourishes their delicate sense of identity. In doing so, you force them to confront a harsh reality they cannot bear without you. Their carefully constructed illusion crumbles. Another heart-wrenching reason a narcissist begins to unravel the moment you depart lies in the shattering of their illusion of control. For them, control is not merely a desire, it is a lifeline. Their entire psychological existence hinges on exerting dominance over others. Why? because managing the outside world allows them to evade the turmoil that brews within. When you walk away, you disrupt that meticulously maintained facade, exposing a truth they cannot face. They are not as invincible as they once thought. To grasp why this is so destabilizing, we must understand how intricately a narcissist's sense of control is linked to their fragile ego. For most individuals, the ability to influence others is tempered by an acknowledgement of mutual independence. Healthy relationships thrive on trust, compromise, and shared decision-making. But for a narcissist, this equilibrium is unattainable. Their internal landscape is dominated by a stark dichotomy of power. They are either in control, or they are exposed and vulnerable. The realization of this truth can be a devastating blow, leaving them adrift in a world they can no longer manipulate. For them, vulnerability feels like a death sentence. At the core of this lies a profound and unbearable fear. The fear of being revealed as weak or unworthy. This fear looms so large that it influences nearly every interaction they engage in. They seek control not out of strength, but from a deep-seated terror of what might happen if they relinquish it. Consequently, they twist conversations, manipulate narratives, and impose their will on the lives of others. It becomes a compulsive defensive mechanism, a way to keep the world within their grasp, and, in turn, preserve their fragile sense of self. When you remain within a narcissist's sphere, you unwittingly reinforce this painful illusion. Each time you set aside your own needs for theirs, each time you let them dictate the terms of your relationship, you validate their belief in their own dominance. But the moment you choose to leave, you disrupt this cycle. You shatter the illusion that they hold the reins. And here lies the heartbreaking truth: they cannot bear that loss. Why? Because if they lack control over you, it implies they are powerless over reality itself. This realization is a crushing blow. It tears through the facade they've built and forces them to confront the emptiness beneath. This realization is profoundly heartbreaking. It cuts through the facade they've carefully crafted and compels them to face their most profound insecurity, that beneath it all, they are utterly powerless. Having spent a lifetime evading this truth, its sudden emergence threatens to dismantle everything they've painstakingly constructed. The weight of this unraveling is intensified by the permanence of your choice. Walking away represents a finality that a narcissist struggles to reverse. Unlike the manipulative tactics they employ in everyday life, your absence is an undeniable reality. It serves as undeniable proof that their control is not as absolute as they believed, and for someone who clings to power as a means of defining their identity, this realization is unbearable. In their frantic attempt to regain control, many narcissists will try to draw you back into their orbit. They may resort to a tactic known as hoovering, a calculated effort to pull you back into the relationship through charm, guilt, or even intimidation. It's not about love or true remorse. It's about reestablishing a power dynamic they cannot survive without. Yet, the longer you remain distant, the weaker their hold becomes, and the more you assert your independence, the clearer it becomes that they never truly had control to begin with. This loss of control extends beyond the tangible. It shatters the narrative they've woven about themselves. Narcissists are adept storytellers, not in a creative sense, but in how they fabricate an image of themselves and their relationships. The sadness lies in the fact that their entire existence hinges on a story that is now unraveling. They view themselves as the main character, the one who dictates how events unfold. When you decide to leave, you disrupt that narrative. You introduce an unexpected twist, the possibility that someone could see through their manipulation and choose to walk away. This is where the psychological impact intensifies. By leaving, you mirror back to them a truth they struggle to accept despite their efforts to control others. They cannot govern everything. This realization undermines their sense of identity, as it exposes the fact that their power is merely an illusion. Once that illusion is shattered, restoring it becomes nearly impossible. The irony lies in the fact that their fixation on control highlights their fundamental lack of it. Individuals who are genuinely secure do not need to dominate others to feel complete. They do not fear their partner's independence because they possess a solid sense of self. In contrast, a narcissist lacks this internal stability. Without control, they feel as though they are falling apart. And when you walk away, you compel them to face that disintegration directly. Perhaps the most notable aspect is that the more you reclaim your independence, the more their world begins to fall apart. Your choice to leave is not merely an act of self-preservation. It poses an existential threat to the narcissist's entire psychological framework. Once that framework starts to weaken, it is only a matter of time before the entire facade crumbles. In the end, this is the grim reality they cannot evade, no matter how desperately they cling to their illusions. True power resides in your ability to walk away, for in doing so, you unveil the one thing that haunts them, the unsettling truth that their control was never as unyielding as they imagined. Once that facade crumbles, they are left with nothing but the abyss they have been fleeing from all along. The moment you sever ties, a narcissist begins to unravel, as their meticulously constructed self-image collapses like a house of cards. They depend on the reflections from others to sustain their grandiose sense of self. Without this external affirmation, their inner world becomes a fragile, trembling void. When you depart, especially with unwavering resolve, you strip them of one of their most vital mirrors, the one that validates their superiority and upholds their delusions. This withdrawal of attention is not merely an inconvenience. It is a deep psychological wound that festers within. At the heart of narcissism lies a haunting paradox, an insatiable hunger for validation, intertwined with a profound, unacknowledged insecurity. While they project an air of confidence and self-assuredness, this facade is merely a mask that conceals a shattered and vulnerable inner self. They crave the reflections of others to affirm the identity they wish to believe in, for beneath that mask, they are lost, unsure of who they truly are. Due to their lack of a genuine and stable self-identity, they become reliant on external validation to uphold their sense of worth. When you stay in a relationship with a narcissist, you unwittingly play a vital role in preserving this fragile illusion. Your attention, whether it's praise or criticism, nourishes their desperate need for significance. Even when you stand up to them or resist their manipulative ways, you are still part of the intricate dance that keeps their delicate self-image from shattering. However, when you choose to leave, you disrupt this entire dynamic. You take away the validation they require to feel superior, and in its absence, their identity begins to crumble. The pain of this collapse is intensified by the harsh truth. Your departure reveals they are not as powerful or essential as they have always convinced themselves. In their distorted view, people are meant to revolve around them, providing endless admiration and attention. When you break free from that orbit, you challenge their fundamental belief that they are the center of the universe, unable to tolerate any threats to their inflated self-image. Your absence becomes a deep wound that festers and expands. Yet, the disintegration of their self-perception is not just an emotional upheaval. It signifies a profound existential crisis. Narcissists lack a cohesive inner identity that can endure rejection or abandonment. Instead, they create a false self, a grandiose facade meant to conceal their deep-seated feelings of inadequacy. The sadness lies in the realization that their need for validation ultimately leads to their own undoing. This false self can only endure as long as it is mirrored back to them by others. When you leave, you break that mirror, and without that reflection, the facade begins to crumble. This breakdown is especially severe if you were seen as a key source of validation. The more they try to control or possess you, the more painful your exit becomes. Narcissists do not build relationships based on authentic emotional bonds. Rather, they perceive others as extensions of themselves, tools for their own emotional management. When you depart, you remove a vital component of that system, forcing them to confront the emptiness they have long evaded. Additionally, your exit reveals a truth they desperately wish to ignore, that they are not invulnerable. Narcissists live in constant fear of being unmasked as weak or unworthy, and they strive relentlessly to suppress that fear. Your choice to leave directly challenges their self-image. It clearly indicates that their control over you was never as complete as they thought. Since their entire identity is constructed on the illusion of superiority, any disruption to that illusion feels like a profound threat. In reaction to this threat, many narcissists will try to regain control. They may attempt to entice you back with charm, promises of transformation, or even intimidation. This isn't due to a genuine concern for your well-being. Rather, it's because they can't bear the thought of losing their self-image. Your absence acts as a reflection of their greatest fear, that they are hollow and powerless without someone to dominate. As you assert your independence, it becomes increasingly evident that their power was merely an illusion. The irony lies in the fact that the more they strive to uphold their inflated self-image, the more fragile it becomes. True confidence is rooted in a secure and authentic sense of self, which narcissists lack. Consequently, they remain trapped in a cycle of seeking, controlling, and manipulating others to maintain their identity. When that system collapses, and you choose to leave, they are confronted with the very emptiness they have been trying to escape. It's crucial to recognize that your departure is not merely an act of self-liberation. It also reveals a deeper truth. By walking away, you expose the reality that a narcissist desperately tries to hide. Their power only persists as long as others permit it. Once this truth is revealed, it cannot be ignored. No matter how hard they attempt to regain control, the illusion has already been broken. This is the ultimate outcome of leaving a narcissist. You not only liberate yourself, you also dismantle the core of their identity. You compel them to face a terrifying truth they dread without the validation of others for their fabricated persona. They are utterly insignificant. Once that fragile facade shatters, there is no return to the comforting shadows. The mirror lies in shards, revealing only the void they have desperately concealed. Another chilling reason a narcissist begins to unravel the moment you depart is the disintegration of their control. Control is the dark axis upon which their existence spins. Without it, their fragile psychological balance collapses into chaos. Narcissists do not form relationships as equals. They manipulate as puppeteers, each interaction meticulously designed to maintain their dominance, to twist the narrative in their favor, and to fulfill their emotional cravings at the expense of others. The instant you withdraw, you shatter that carefully crafted power dynamic, leaving them exposed and vulnerable. For the narcissist, control is not merely a desire, it is a lifeline. Deep within their psyche lies a profound insecurity and an inability to endure uncertainty. When they dominate others, it calms their inner turmoil. It reassures them of their worth, their importance, and that their twisted story remains unchallenged. But when you leave, especially with resolute clarity, you strip them of this vital sense of control, plunging them into a darkness they cannot escape. However, when you choose to leave, particularly with decisiveness and clarity, you strip them of that sense of significance. For a narcissist, losing control is not just a minor setback. It poses an existential threat. The strategies they employ to maintain this control are often quite subtle. They depend on manipulation, gaslighting, shifting blame, and emotional withdrawal. These methods are crafted not only to confuse you, but also to erode your perception of reality. If they can keep you second-guessing yourself, doubting your value, and seeking their validation, you remain under their sway. Yet, the instant you see these tactics for what they truly are, you liberate yourself from their hold. By walking away, you illustrate, whether you are aware of it or not, that their control was never as complete as they thought. This loss of control is particularly devastating for a narcissist, as it compels them to confront their inherent powerlessness. Despite their outward bravado, narcissists are heavily reliant on others to sustain their fragile self-image. They need to perceive themselves as the orchestrators of every interaction, the ones in control. Your choice to leave exposes a reality they cannot tolerate, that they do not wield absolute power, and that their influence has boundaries. The psychological impact of this realization is profound. For a narcissist, control serves as a psychological framework. It keeps their delicate identity intact. Without it, their facade starts to crumble. The sense of invincibility they nurture serves as a shield against their deep-seated feelings of fragility. When you distance yourself from their sphere, you unveil the truth they strive so hard to conceal. Their power is sustained solely by the willing involvement of others. Once that involvement fades, so too does their facade of control. This is why many narcissists react with such fervor when they sense their grip loosening. Some may try to draw you back in with love bombing, overwhelming you with affection, promises of transformation, and expressions of remorse. Others might resort to harsher methods: blame, intimidation, or efforts to undermine your credibility. Yet, beneath these tactics lies a profound desperation to reclaim the control they cannot bear to lose. It is not love that fuels these actions. It is a haunting fear. Fear of helplessness, fear of being exposed, fear that without someone to dominate, they will be left alone with the void they have spent their lives evading. The painful truth is this: the more you assert your independence, the more fragile their hold becomes. When you refuse to engage in their manipulations, when you no longer respond to their provocations, you strip them of the emotional sustenance they need to uphold their sense of superiority. Narcissistic control hinges on your involvement. It thrives on your emotional investment, your fear, your confusion, your yearning for validation. When you withdraw that investment, the entire edifice crumbles, leaving behind a stark emptiness. There is a significant lesson here for anyone who has found themselves ensnared in a narcissist's grip. You are not powerless. You are not confined. The perception of their control is maintained solely by your willingness to accept the role they impose on you. The instant you reject that role and distance yourself, their power crumbles. Genuine control and true authority are not rooted in manipulation. They stem from autonomy. It involves the ability to stand independently, trust your own perceptions, and refuse to be defined by someone else's narrative. What is particularly telling is that when a narcissist loses control over one individual, their entire facade starts to fall apart. This occurs because their sense of superiority is not self-sustaining. It relies on continuous reinforcement. Each person who walks away diminishes the illusion. Every act of defiance erodes the false image. And eventually, the narcissist is left with the stark reality that their power is merely an illusion upheld by the compliance of others. When you choose to leave, you not only liberate yourself, you strike at the core of their identity. You remind them, in the most undeniable manner, that their control is not absolute. Once this reality is revealed, it cannot be concealed again. The illusion is broken, the facade collapses, and beneath it lies a truth they cannot evade. Without the ability to control others, they are nothing. And that is the ultimate power you possess. By stepping back and refusing to be manipulated, you expose the one truth a narcissist cannot tolerate, that their power is a deception, and without your involvement, that deception cannot endure. Another significant reason a narcissist begins to falter the moment you depart is that your absence compels them to confront the emptiness they have been desperately trying to avoid. Beneath the grandiosity, manipulation, and incessant need for control lies a deep void, one they dread facing. For a narcissist, relationships are not about authentic connection or mutual growth. Rather, they serve a much darker purpose. They act as a means of escape, a way to avoid the internal turmoil that would engulf them if left unaddressed. At the heart of narcissism is a fractured identity, often stemming from deep-rooted wounds inflicted in early life. Many narcissists come from backgrounds where love was conditional, and their self-worth was linked to performance or external validation. Consequently, they learn to create a false self, a meticulously crafted persona aimed at garnering admiration while hiding their profound feelings of inadequacy. The false self of a narcissist is delicate. It needs ongoing reinforcement, which comes from the individuals they ensnare in their lives. When you leave, you take away a vital source of that reinforcement, causing their facade to start breaking down. Your departure is particularly destabilizing because narcissists lack the ability to self-soothe. In contrast, healthy individuals can tap into their inner strength when faced with loss or rejection. They reflect, mourn, and adapt. However, a narcissist cannot do this. They have spent their lives evading true self-reflection, as it would force them to confront their own inadequacies. Instead, they project their pain onto others, seek new validation, or try to regain control. Yet, no external remedy can fill the emptiness within them, and the longer they go, without someone to support their fragile self-image, the more their internal chaos grows. This is why many narcissists respond with panic and aggression when someone leaves. It's not just about losing control, although that plays a role. It's also about the unbearable silence that follows without someone to reflect their image back to them. As their inner turmoil escalates, their reactions become increasingly intense. Without anyone to reflect an idealized version of themselves, they are left to face the painful truth they have long evaded. Deep down, they feel hollow and unworthy. Their entire identity has been crafted to shield them from this reality, and your absence threatens the fragile structure of their psychological existence. This is why they may go to great lengths to avoid confronting this emptiness. Some will try to pull you back into their orbit, using guilt, charm, or promises of change to entice you to take on your previous role. Others may quickly seek new sources of validation, diving into new relationships or surrounding themselves with people who can mirror the idealized image they desperately desire. Yet, none of these tactics can genuinely fill the void within. At best, they offer a fleeting escape, a distraction from the internal turmoil that only intensifies in your absence. What makes this situation so heartbreaking is that the narcissist's survival hinges on preventing you from recognizing your own worth. If you remain ensnared in their narrative, questioning your value or feeling responsible for their emotional well-being, they can sustain the illusion of control. However, when you leave, especially with clarity and determination, you shatter that illusion. You reveal that their grip is not as unyielding as they thought, And perhaps most tragically, you compel them to confront a reality they cannot bear without someone to reflect their distorted image. They are left with nothing, yet there lies a chilling liberation in confronting this unsettling truth. When you grasp the twisted mechanics of a narcissist's behavior, when you unveil the cruelty, manipulation, and insatiable need for control that arise from their own festering wounds, you begin to see that their grip on you was never as formidable it appeared. It was merely a haunting illusion, sustained by your compliance and the role they forced upon you. The instant you reject that role, the moment you step back and reclaim your own identity, their power crumbles into dust. More ominously, their downfall is not your burden to bear. It can be all too easy, especially for those with empathetic hearts, to feel a gnawing guilt when a narcissist spirals into chaos. But it is not your duty to prop up a soul that refuses to confront their own darkness. You are not obligated to sacrifice your own well-being to shield someone from the shadows of their own despair. True liberation emerges when you sever the ties that bind you to another's emotional turmoil and redirect your focus toward your own healing and growth. And therein lies the ultimate irony in their frantic quest to dominate you. Narcissists unwittingly expose their most profound vulnerability. For true strength, genuine autonomy does not thrive on subjugation. It does not require the diminishment of others to feel complete. True strength originates from within, stemming from the capacity to stand independently, confront your own flaws with sincerity, and take charge of your own life. A narcissist is incapable of this, which is why they exert so much effort to prevent you from realizing that you can. When you choose to walk away, you are doing much more than regaining your freedom. You are revealing the core vulnerability behind the narcissist's facade. Your actions illustrate, through your autonomy, that their power is merely an illusion. Once you do this, the entire structure starts to fall apart because, ultimately, the reality is straightforward. A narcissist's existence relies on your silence, your compliance, and your belief in your own powerlessness. However, the instant you reject that narrative and acknowledge your own value, you shatter the illusion, and nothing frightens them more. One of the most significant reasons a narcissist begins to falter the moment you leave is that, at their essence, they fear becoming irrelevant. Narcissists rely on a constant influx of attention, known in psychology as narcissistic supply, to uphold their delicate self-image. Without it, their meticulously woven facade begins to fray, and your exit becomes more than just a loss of sustenance. It is a direct strike against the twisted narrative they have been spinning about themselves. When you turn away, especially with a chilling clarity and finality, you compel them to face a horrifying reality: they are not as powerful, desirable, or indispensable as they so desperately wish to believe. This craving for significance is not merely a desire, it is a psychological compulsion. For most, self-worth is anchored in internal values, integrity, competence, and meaningful connections. But for a narcissist, self-worth is entirely contingent upon external validation. It is drawn from how others perceive them. They must be admired, feared, or desired, for without that reflection from the outside world, their identity is but a fragile illusion. Thus, when you leave, you shatter this delicate balance. You become a living testament to the fact that they are not the omnipotent beings they envision themselves to be. And nothing is more disorienting to a narcissist than the realization that they can be so easily cast aside. What makes this dynamic so chilling is that narcissists pour immense energy into maintaining an illusion of invulnerability. They exude an air of superiority, pretending to rise above the mundane struggles of human existence. Yet, this very pretense is what makes your departure so devastating. It pierces through their carefully crafted delusion. It unveils the dark truth they strive to keep hidden. Their power is merely an illusion, sustained only by your compliance. The instant you choose to turn your back, you expose their inability to dominate you, revealing that their influence is far more delicate than they would ever admit. This is precisely why their reactions are so explosive when you depart. For a narcissist, being abandoned is not merely a personal slight. It is a terrifying existential crisis. If someone they once ensnared can walk away and flourish without them, it forces them to confront a chilling question they dread. What if I am not as extraordinary as I think? This haunting inquiry lingers in their mind, for their entire identity is crafted to evade the reality of their own triviality. When you leave, you drag that fear into the light, and the more steadfast you are in your exit, the more suffocating it becomes for them. What's particularly unsettling is how this unraveling often takes on twisted forms. Some narcissists become obsessively desperate to reclaim their grip, inundating you with messages, pledging to change, or even resorting to sinister manipulation and coercion. Others may swing to the opposite end of the spectrum, feigning indifference as if you were never significant to them at all. This collapse is a dark dance of desperation and denial, revealing the fragility of their constructed facade. Some will swing to the opposite extreme, acting as if you never held any significance in their lives, desperately seeking new connections or displaying a facade of indifference. Yet, these reactions are merely two sides of the same coin. Both are attempts to reclaim a sense of power and importance. They cannot bear the thought that your life might continue, perhaps even flourish, without their presence. This sheds light on why cutting off contact is so impactful. When you sever communication, you strip the narcissist of the one thing they cannot create on their own: validation. Without your responses, without your emotional investment, they are left alone with the emptiness that resides within them. While they will try everything to escape that void, through new relationships, distractions, or self-promotion, none of these strategies can erase the message your absence conveys: you are not the focal point of my existence. Perhaps this realization is the most profound of all, holding the key to your liberation. The truth is, a narcissist's power exists only as long as you believe in it. Their control hinges on your willingness to participate in their game, to view yourself through the warped lens they impose. But the moment you stop engaging, the moment you understand that their validation does not define your worth, the entire illusion collapses, and within that collapse lies your freedom. What is most poignant, however, is how deeply the narcissist relies on you remaining unaware of this truth. Their deepest dread isn't merely that you might leave. It's the haunting thought that you could depart without a single glance back, for in that moment, you shatter the cycle, unveiling the dark truth they labor tirelessly to hide. Their power is but a fragile illusion, upheld solely by your complicity. Once you grasp this reality, there is no return. The enchantment is shattered. When you stride away with clarity and determination, you do more than reclaim your freedom. You deliver a devastating blow to the narcissist's already tenuous sense of self. Your actions scream that they do not define you, forcing them to confront the chilling truth: they cannot evade without you. Without anyone to mirror their deceit, they are left with nothing but